Hello? Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new role of cities in global issues. And thank you very, very much for being here. I'm George Fertitta. I'm CEO of Mike Bloomberg's global pro bono consultancy, Bloomberg Associates. Let me begin, if I may, by giving a very brief overview of our panelists today. Although I think Georgios Kaminis does not need an introduction, I'm going to do it anyway. Mayor Kaminis has been the mayor of Athens since January 1st, 2011, and over the past 4 years, I've not only gotten to know him very, very well, I've come to value our open relationship and our friendship tremendously. He's truly a gift to the city of Athens. He's honest, sincere, and relentlessly dedicated to the city. He's very brave in the things that he's done, and looking in front of me, I know he's also a very good daddy, because I see there's some children here. Mayor Kaminis has accomplished a great deal for the people of Athens under extremely difficult circumstances, and has led the efforts to enhance Athens' image and global stature. It is an honor to have him here with us today and to speak about some of his great work. Manos Moschopoulos is a senior program officer for the Open Society Initiative for Europe, leading the portfolio on the protection of rights of immigrants. Manos has led the Open Society Initiative for European efforts on working class inclusion, community cohesion, and collective action in England. He has also, of course, worked extensively on projects to support civil society organizations throughout Greece. Peggy Antonakou is the CEO of Microsoft Greece, with deep experience in the fields of management and marketing. Having held key positions both in Europe and in the United States, she joined Microsoft in February 2012 as the commercial director and has been a great asset to the Athens Digital Council. Having a private sector superstar like Peggy supporting Athens is invaluable. Now, we're going to have two formats today. I'm going to be asking questions of the first three people, and then we have three other people that are actually been very actively involved in the execution and the programming of some of the initiatives for the city of Athens. Sitting next to me is Alexandros Kambouroglou. Alexandros has served as a senior advisor to the mayor of Athens since 2014. He's been spearheading Mayor Kaminis' commitment to the public-private partnership collaboration, including leading the city's strong partnerships with Bloomberg Associates, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the C40 Climate Change Group, as well as the creation of the Athens Partnership, a key to the success of numerous of the initiatives of the Kaminis administration. Elina is the project manager of the revitalization of Athens Commercial Triangle program. She's also had extensive experience in programs of urban scale, served as a special advisor to the Greek Minister of Culture, a special aide at the General Secretariat of the Prime Minister of Greece, and in many ways the go-to person to get something done, especially in the Trigono. And Kostas Hambidis is responsible for the digital transformation of the city of Athens. He spent 2 years as a special advisor to the mayor of Athens, actively participating in the development of the Digital Agenda 2020. In February 2017, he became the first chief digital officer in all of Europe. And frankly, he's done an amazing job in creating the digital roadmap that he created in January 2018, which includes the digital initiatives for Athens, setting the stage for this to be the cities of the future. As you well know, by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in cities. And as more and more people move to cities, mayors and city governments are increasingly becoming the world's most important agents of change. This is especially true when we see the growing political turmoil and frustrations with national and regional governments around the world. At the end of the day, the role of cities is to make up for this inactivity and the government deficiencies. And the role of mayors is to be the leaders, the supporters, the protectors, and the inspiration for their residents. Of course, with growth comes not just responsibility, but cost. Every day, cities struggle to find the resources and capacity to deliver for their residents. To combat this, more and more mayors are now embracing the idea of working with nonprofit private sectors. Being open to and facilitating these cross-sector partnerships has become critical for cities and mayors today. Working together in a committed and transparent manner, these sectors can spark innovation, promote real, actionable change. which of course is why we structured today's panel so you can all hear from each of these sectors. I'm going to start, if I may, with Mayor Kaminis. You became mayor at a time of social and economic upheaval in Greece, which has left even more acutely in the capital of Athens. What has been your strategy and the plan to address these problems, and how did you experience in dealing with these problems change your outlook of governance?
Well, thank you, George. Thank you for your good words. And well, when we took office in January 2011, it was a situation, let's say, of a perfect storm. Our municipal budget was slashed down 40%. The workforce was not specialized. People started leaving, taking their pensions because they didn't want to see their salaries cut down. Now we're working with half of the workforce that we found when we entered the municipality. We couldn't hire people, we couldn't fire people, so we couldn't manage our personnel. And the central government, they had their own things in their mind, how to adapt to the situation created with the memoranda and the economic crisis. So in a certain way, we had to, we were on our own. And in reality, this didn't happen because we reached out. We started looking for all the stakeholders in the city, public and private, and I could say mostly private. We turned to the active citizen groups in the city. We turned to private companies. We turned out and reached out to non-profit organizations. And we started creating our own networks and working closely with them. But we had to build a mutual trust. We had, first of all, to break the stereotypes. I personally had to break the stereotypes on the majority in the municipal council and the city council, that we had to work together with the private sector, and on the other hand, we had to break, the stereotype of the private sector that you can never work in bringing results with the public sector. So among any other things, we created, let's say, the Digital Council, where we had Microsoft joining us together with other very big companies like Accenture, Google, Vodafone, Cosmote. We created the Digital Council that drafted the strategy for the digitalization of the city. Microsoft, for example, is offering computer literacy programs in municipality buildings. We created, during the refugee crisis, the Athens Center for Coordination of Migration and Refugees. There we had Open Society Foundation offering their expertise, their leadership in those issues. Well, in a very few words, we left no stone unturned, and we reached out to find partners, and I think that the response was a very good one.
Thank you. I should point out, by the way, that I work with cities all around the world, and there's no mayor that I work with that is probably less aggressive about promoting what they've done than Georgios Kaminis. We all know, I'm from the United States, we all know that we have a president that will
Very polite way to put something.
It's, as I was saying this, that there are many cities that I work with, and some mayors are actively promoting things that they may not even be responsible for, but this is the one mayor that doesn't stand up and take credit for so many of the things that happen behind the scenes, so I'm hoping today that some of that will actually come out. I'm going to move over to Manos for a moment. Open society foundations have been galvanizing force around many issues, migration in particular. You even created the Mayor's Migration Council. Why did OSF focus on cities, and what are the benefits and challenges of doing so?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation. And I'll start with the Mayor's Migration Council, for those of you that may not know of it. As there is growing policy and political discussion about migration around the world, including the processes that happen at the United Nations with the Global Compacts for refugees and migrants, we felt that it was quite important that we bring in the mayors and the cities to these discussions First, because the mayors and cities have a realistic perspective of what's happening on the ground. They are usually the ones to be the first respondents to an emergency situation of a large number of new arrivals. They are the ones that are left behind after the cameras, let's say, and the spotlight has ended, and are the ones that are leading the efforts to integrate. So they bring this perspective that needs to be informing our policy discussions. And second, we have also seen that cities are often progressive about the way they go about these questions and issues. So Mayor Kaminis is one of the founding members of the Mayor Migration Council, alongside mayors from all around the world, from Los Angeles to Milan in Italy to Kampala. So the end goal, we hope, is that this will create yet another outlet to add to the regional networks that we have on mayors around the world to promote the voices of cities in these very important global discussions. And the reason we focus on cities beyond what I've said already, that they are the ones, they're also the ones that can provide durable solutions, because what migrants and refugees face as challenges when they're trying to integrate and include themselves in a new city, whether they chose to migrate to it or whether they were forced to by war or poverty, this challenge they face are very similar to the ones faced by the local population. And it is not wise to only look at the problems of refugees in isolation. And I can't think of a better platform than cities that would be able to take stock of these problems that face both communities. I'll give a very quick example in housing, where in Athens, for instance, Sotiris Sitheris, a journalist at Athens Live, counted the number of Airbnbs we had in the city and found that 91% of them were available throughout the year. Refugees face an acute housing problem at the moment in Greece and elsewhere, all around Europe. Locals are also facing the same problems. If we don't listen to the cities about how we go about solving these problems, if we don't support the cities and take the lead in solving these problems, then who else would we turn to?
Thank you very much, Manos. Peggy, for many years, the idea of cities and corporations working together was a big taboo. That has changed significantly in an era of corporate and social responsibility and public-private partnerships. To what do you attribute this change, and why does a company like Microsoft want to work directly with city governments?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. Kalimera και από μένα. I would say that it was an even bigger taboo in Greece for so many years. So we were very honored and very happy that we were invited to participate in the Digital Council that the mayor created. And of course, to have the first digital officer in Europe being in Athens, that shows that a very ancient city can be very forward-looking and very progressive in terms of where the world is right now. So it's amazing, how technology is really kind of shifting our lives right now and is everywhere. Talking about refugees, I was in Lesbos back in the day when, the problem was very intense in the first months of the refugee crisis. And I was amazed by the fact that when the refugees were arriving safely in Lesbos, the first thing they were asking for was a battery charger so they could charge their cell phones, even before they asked for water, because they needed to reach out to their families and say that they made it alive. So the new Maslow pyramid, I don't know if you've seen it, but below food and basic needs is Wi-Fi, and then there's battery. So technology is changing our lives, and technology has the capacity of improving the city lives that we're living. And you talked about urbanization and how it will be more than 80% of the global population living in cities. So it's not a question about cities anymore. It's a question about the world we're going to live in, right? Because this is going to be where we're going to live in. I think companies, every company, but I'm talking about Microsoft specifically, we also have the responsibility to making sure that we give back to the communities and the cities and the countries that we are part of, because essentially healthy business needs a healthy environment and a healthy community to participate in. So I'm very happy and proud to be part of your effort, Mayor. And
Thank you. Coming back to the mayor, you've mentioned many times that extroversion and trust are the main ingredients of your response to governing Athens. Does this signal a new role for cities, city networks, alliances? Are cities really ready to take upon this new role in global politics?
Well, yes, I think they are ready. As you said, George, before 70% of the people in 2050 will live in cities. That already happens in Europe. exactly the same percentage. What's happening, what has started happening many decades ago because of the globalization is that national borders, let's say, are fading, and what emerges is cities and mega cities. We already have cities of tens of millions in China. So the city networks are extremely important. So that is what we try to do, to connect, either with networks of across the board, like Eurocities, or with thematic networks like C40 and 100 resilient cities. And of course, we had the luck to meet you, the Bloomberg associates, to whom we owe many things because of your insight, your remarks, your continuous support, yours personally too, George. And so we started becoming more and more extrovert. We had to take the lead on the migration issue, on the refugee issue. And we proposed to the European Union the creation, and it was created, let's say, not a network, but an initiative of solidarity cities, because while the governments, were erasing walls and fences, we reached out to cities like Barcelona, Madrid, Berlin, even Gdansk from Poland, having those cities pledging to receive refugees from Athens. Well, I'm very proud that in the refugee issue we are protagonists. What's going on? We had to lead by example. I'm very happy and very thankful to Open Society Foundations and the government of Switzerland, because they proposed to us to be founding members of the Leadership Board of the Mayor's Migration Council. Well, to end up, I think that the future belongs to cities. And we have to propose a new social contract, not only to Europe, but the whole world. Innovation is in cities. Many solutions now are taking place in cities on many levels. And, we tried during those years to do our best, and I hope that the next mayor will continue. We will help him in any way.
Thank you. Just to build on what Georgios was saying, there is no other government other than municipal and city government that is as close to the residents as a city. And quite honestly, this is getting more and more imperative because people are victimized by federal governments, they're victimized by regional governments, and at the end of the day, what the people care about is who's going to deliver the services that I need day after day after day. And it's only the mayors that can actually do that. It's interesting because we were talking earlier, most residents don't connect what's going on in their city with the actions of the mayor. They just assume somehow the garbage gets picked up. They just assume somehow the traffic gets taken care of. They have many reasons to complain, which usually goes right to City Hall. Having said that, all of the things that take place almost invisibly are often not connected to the mayor. And today, in a little while, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Back to Manos, I want to talk about the immigration problems again. And it's a huge global issue, but one that's impacting Greece, as we were talking earlier. What was OSF's ability to bring to the table that the government could not? What has OSF been able to, in reality, have the impact on Athens?
So there's our benefit and our privilege is twofold. One, that we do come from a position where we have an international network of, first, my colleagues looking inwards with the expertise that they bring from around the world. Second, the multitude of grantees and partners that we have around the world. And the second part of the privilege linked to that one is also that we are not the ones that have to be at the front lines of any situation like all of these are, like the cities and the civil society organizations on the ground. So I say that what we can effectively do is create spaces for discussion, trying to connect policy processes, as I said before, with what's happening on the ground, but also spaces for action, being able to flexibly bring resources to the ground where we could provide a small response that could have a larger impact. In Athens in particular, I'd like to highlight a few things that we do. First, the Open City Fellowship that we launched is active in Athens. Mayor Kaminis has a colleague, Asaf Fajam, who's an advisor working under Deputy Mayor Papagiannakis. I was very happy to see him speak in Geneva at the UNHCR's Protection Dialogue last December and bring the perspective of migrants, which is often lost in this, as you said, very intense discussion that's happening about migration around the world. Alongside that, we do support some very key actors in the response to the refugee situation and the long-term integration prospects of migrants. Our largest grantee is Solidarity Now, which is an effort that we launched, particularly keeping what I said before in mind, that you cannot look at the problems of one population group without the other. As we move towards a cross-community cohesion that we very much need, and in Greece especially with the dangers that arise from the growth of nationalist and nativist politics, this cross-community cohesion is upon. Solidarity Now was our way of trying to address that by bringing together migrants and locals and other civil society organizations, most of which sit in the ACCMR, which is the coordination body that the city of Athens has established, either being placed at the Greek Council for Refugees, which helps refugees and their asylum claims and the protection, all the way to the Greek forums of refugees and migrants, which also provide the lifeblood, if I may, for the Migration Integration Council that the city of Athens, in common with other cities, has.
Thank you. Mayor, would you like to comment on anything that Manos just mentioned?
Well, I would like to point out that the Athens Coordination Center for Migrants and Refugees is hosting more than 80 different organizations, 90 organizations, NGOs, public and private entities. It's always the same idea. You bring stakeholders together on an equal basis, on a transparent basis. And there you can see that you can create win-win situations. So that is the main idea. The municipality has to serve as an umbrella for the city and bring to the surface the most creative forces that they are there, they exist.
Thank you. Peggy, Microsoft has had a seat at the Digital Council in Athens. We're seeing more and more cities create digital roadmaps and establish chief digital officers. Becoming digitized and technologically smart is clearly more than just a trend, but is becoming a necessity. What do you see are the biggest areas where cities need to catch up, and how can private sector help bridge this gap?
I would say it's difficult to think of any part of the city life that it's not important to be digital or to be digitized at some point. I mean, you start from waste management, traffic management, safety, housing, traffic management, whatever you name it, it needs to be digitized at some point, and it will save costs to the city, it will save time to the citizens, any sort of service to the citizens. It's important to be fast, easy, and accessible to everyone. Smart city is a big buzzword and is everywhere. But since we're talking about inclusive growth these days, I would say that, technology is just a tool. The decisions will be made by people. You need a mayor with a vision and a commitment, because there's definitely some political costs in some situations, and Mayor Kaminis was very willing to take it again and again. I've seen it. But at the end of the day, the technology needs to work for the people. The technology is just a tool. So I would really argue that we need to shift from the smart city concept to a wise city concept. And, which city would be better fit in the world to be the first wise city, if not Athens, that, is named after Athena, the goddess of wisdom, right? So an example that we're very proud of in Athens is a common collaboration that we've had with an NGO and Social Innov and the city of Athens to create in the space of Lela Karayani, in this fantastic building in the center of Athens that was just sitting there for a very long time. And we now created a digital hub where we provide courses on digital skills, on even basic entrepreneurship, business plans. We see the whole neighborhood. We've seen more than 3,000 people come to Lela Karayani in this last year. People of all ages, even elders from the neighborhood that didn't really have nowhere to go, and now they come there and they socialize. To me, this is the meaning of a city. This is the meaning of a neighborhood. And if you can change a neighborhood, you can change a city, a country, and the whole world. So very inspiring to see.
Thank you. Now what I'd like to do is maybe just change gears a little bit and move on to some of my colleagues that have done actual sort of activations throughout Athens. And some of this, you may not be aware of, so I'm going to ask them to explain as best they can about some of the programs that over the last several years have been in place. So let me start with Alexandros.
Okay. Thank you, George. So I will try and be very concise in explaining to you what one of the tools that the Kaminis administration has used is, and it's the Athens Partnership. It's a philanthropic incubator that for innovative public-private partnerships. What that means technically is that we facilitate public-private partnerships and cross-sector collaborations with the city of Athens in order to benefit the residents of the city, thus the philanthropic. Now, this started as an initiative of Mayor Kaminis back in 2015. And the idea was, and that's how it evolved, for it to be an independent nonprofit organization. And in the 3 years that it's been in operation, we have managed over 12 million euro, which is a lot of money for a Greek city, that have funded over 15 programs that support mayoral priorities in the city of Athens. Have engaged over 300 organizations with the city of Athens, corporations, NGOs, community groups, and has led to the creation of several key initiatives of the city, like its digital strategy, the Athens Coordination Center for Migrant and Refugee Issues that the mayor mentioned earlier, the activities in the Triangle area that you'll hear Elina talk about in a second, the Open Schools Project, which creates communities in 25 neighborhoods throughout Athens, and several others, many of which, by the way, were acknowledged and mentioned when the city and Mayor Kaminis was awarded with the recognition by the European Commission of Athens to be the Innovation Capital of Europe for 2018, which is I think a big recognition. One wouldn't expect Athens to be among the most innovative cities in Europe. So we've had surprising success, and I believe when I say that, everyone's surprised that that's been involved in this. And the reason for that, I think, has to do with the way we work. And it is that we basically create the conditions or the space, as Manos said earlier, for the parties involved to revisit or build relationships. What do I mean by that? 3 points, and then I'm off to the specifics of the project. First of all, because the idea was not to bypass the system, but work with the system, work with the municipality, work with the people in the municipality, what happens is that, first of all, motivated employees are energized and start performing much better. And we have them work together with the best possible people we can bring from the private sector in whatever it is that they're working on. That definitely creates a new level of trust on behalf of the city for the private sector. So we break down the fear of collaborating with the private sector down to the people who actually have to work with the private sector. Secondly, this helps build trust in government, the other way around, by presenting to a private sector organization the basic framework through which they'd like to operate with total transparency, constant monitoring and evaluation of a project, as well as a well-designed project that has a beginning, middle, and an end. Then the private sector is willing to engage with the city more easily. And the third, and equally and possibly more important, is how that affects the residents of the city. The people who are involved or are affected by the programs that are developed in the way that I described, at first, obviously, they're very cynical and will question whether whatever it is they're asked to be involved with will actually be realized. But over time, they come to see that the city is actually delivering on what it promised in a very serious way, even if it falters or has setbacks along the way. When that happens, automatically, again, there's a building of trust towards the municipality. So I knew civic identity emerges through these projects. I don't know if that has been clear. So, thank you. Elina.
Now, Elina.
Okay, I'll talk to you about the Athens Commercial Triangle Program, which is an effort to pedestrianize a 28-acre area, improve the everyday life of residents, visitors, strengthen the cooperation with the civil society, enhance the neighborhood, and revive a historical spot in the center of Athens. For a period of 8 months, through preliminary measures, we built on trust, engaging the community from day one. 100 temporary planters and benches were adopted by shop owners, flags and original signs, and 6,000 square meters of painted tarmac encourage the public respect for pedestrian areas. Cultural events play a key role in our source of inspiration for our program, and through artistic intervention and events, we have attracted more than 20,000 visitors in the area, most of them young people who had never visited this area before. A monthly publication informs and keeps up to date shop owners. We continue the biographical profiles of business community members in an effort to preserve the historic and cultural heritage of the area. In our effort to enhance the architecture of the area, we have cleaned and protected with anti-graffiti material more than 8,000 square meters of surfaces, and more importantly, we keep them clean. We all know the problem of tags in the center of Athens. The capital work started 14 months ago and will be completed this autumn. It has been a brave decision of Mayor Kaminis not simply to pave the area, but also to upgrade the infrastructure of the area. So this has resulted in certain technical difficulties, making it a complicated, multifaceted project, since we all know that we're operating nearly next to the Acropolis. During these last 2 years, Trigono has attracted more than 30 million euros in economic investment to the neighborhood. 20 new businesses have opened, including 3 new hotels. Trigono is also transformed to a wise Trigono, since wise was the word that was mentioned. Smart LED lighting features, as well as a garbage collection program through SMS, will transform the quality of the area, the quality of life in the area, and Mr. Hambidis will elaborate on that. In 2.5 years, the Athens Trigono program has managed to creatively transform this part of the city from the bottom up by investing to its people. FOTA, Friends of Trigono Athens, is a promising grassroots network of local business owners and residences and other stakeholders who will ensure the continuation of our efforts. We are experimenting, we're learning and celebrating both failures and successes. We work together with more than 10 directorates of the municipality of Athens who have endorsed the program. Our donor, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, the Athens Partnership, which is coordinating us, and the Bloomberg Associates, who are generously offering their know-how and expertise from day one. The Trigono, the triangle, is characterized by 3 edges: passion, participation, determination, pathos, συμμετοχή, επιμονή. These are precisely the 3 fundamental pillars of our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn it over to Kostas, I would just like to comment, this is the first time I've ever seen you in a suit, and I really congratulate you for dressing up for the event today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, George. So, the world is changing, and I suppose that is the appropriate opening line for a Chief Digital Officer. Yes, the digital transformation is here and now all over the world, but is happening despite the local or central government planning. So our daily lives are getting more and more digital every day everywhere in the world. And we are consuming and we are producing data, information every day. And thus, a new form of wealth is now emerging in the world. And we don't know who actually owns this wealth. And I mean data. Data is the new gold and the new oil, as we constantly arguing. But smart cities is much more, and I fully agree with Mr. Antonakou. Smart cities is much more than a sum of smart platforms, smart parking, smart lighting, all these buzzwords that you are listening. It's a real question, is how we will digitally transform our cities, keeping the people at the center, at the heart of the process. Digital transformation of infrastructure, of processes, of behaviors is happening in a much broader context than cities or governments can control or plan. Technology wants to change everything in our lives, but cities can play and should play a key role in determining how this change will happen to all of us. The role of cities in digital transformation is to keep people, I'm saying again, at the center of all this process and establish people's digital rights in this whole new world. That we had in mind when we started in Athens to work on the digital agenda of the city. And that's why we understood that we cannot proceed alone, work on ourselves. But also but that's why we brought all the stakeholders at the same table. And we realized that we have to brought the stakeholders that they really care for the city. They really care to join the forces and work all together for the city, for the citizens. For this, with the support of Bloomberg Associates, Mayor Kaminis, as the mayor itself and also Peggy mentioned before, created the Athens Digital Council. The mayor invited the major IT companies of the country and, of course, distinguished professors of the local universities of the city in order to all together to discuss the digital strategy of the city. So it was the first time in Greece that all these key stakeholders sit together in a table and had this kind of discussion, and it was the first time that we moved the discussion about digitalization of the public sector from closed rooms to an open, wide, transparent discussion on a table altogether. So, but we didn't actually, we didn't only we had discussions, because we are in a country that we are very good in discussions, but not so implementing things. So we had to break this mistrust, because the private sector was not so sure that the private sector is used in a sufficient public sector, and in the contrary, the public sector is afraid to talk even with the private sector. So we had to put together all these parts, the private and the public sector, and that's why we had to build bridges between these two sectors. The public sector the city had to be very consistent, and that's why we announced the digital roadmap, and we made a commitment. We are going to implement what we are discussing. We are going to do our jobs and our tasks in just 12 months. In just 12 months, we succeed to lay down 100 kilometers fiber optic network in Athens, public Wi-Fi networks, new electronic services to everyone, 10,000 free opportunities for digital skills to all in Athens, and of course, new applications for smartphones. But not only this, we created partnerships together with the companies that they are participating to the council. So together with Microsoft, we created the most beautiful digital culture center in Greece, the Lelas Karagiannis project, the START project. And now in Kypseli, you can see people entering this building and having a digital skill for free at the last 12 months. Together with Cosmote and Nokia, with the support of Stavros Niarchos Foundation, we created the Athens Digital Lab because we believe that we have to give to young engineers and scientists in Greece the opportunity to develop their own solutions for the city. And together with Vodafone, we went to the triangle and we developed the smart lighting of the triangle, the smart waste management of the triangle, because we believe that we have to give real solutions to real problems for real people in the city. So cities are changing. The time is changing, the time is for the change, and we have to adopt, we have to work together, not only cities, but in the central government, to work together, all the stakeholders, the universities, the private sector, in order to provide a better daily life to citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Kostas. Thank you very much. Just a few comments I'd like to make, as you actually touched on data, and I would like to point out that Mike Bloomberg, who's my boss, he made his living by selling data. It's been a very good living. He also, of course, was the first mayor in the city of New York to actually make data and the understanding and the use of data to sort of have a great impact on all of the residents. Mike Bloomberg has an expression, I'm not sure any of you ever heard this before, which is, "In God we trust, everybody else give us the data." And actually, without knowing, what the information is, there's no way you can solve a problem. And so from my perspective, when I look at the people that are up here with me on this dais, the reality of it is that my perspective is very different from those of you that are in Greece or those of you who are in Athens. Every day you see the problems, and every day the mayor sees the problems and has to solve the problems. And it's rare that you can have a real insight in comparing yourselves to other cities. And I would tell you that the transformation over the last 4 years in Athens is unparalleled. And I work with Paris and Milan and London. I work with Detroit and Nashville and Houston and Atlanta. I work with Mexico City, Los Angeles, and a number of other cities. And I have not seen the transformation. Now, part of it is that it was a pretty low spot and we had to get higher, but the reality of it is there's more change that has taken place in the city of Athens than any other city that Bloomberg Associates has worked with. And all of you should be not only very proud, you should be very grateful for the changes that you may not even be aware of that are happening, but hopefully will become part of your day-to-day life when you have a greater understanding of all the things that have happened over the last number of years. We have a little extra time, and I thought what might be interesting is to ask anybody in the audience, especially if they'd like to address any question, and start with you. Yes, can we have a microphone, please, up front?
This is a famous politician, Stephanos Manos, the personification of liberalism.
Yes.
Very famous. Yes. And always politically very isolated.
I was impressed by the many things I didn't know. And I was also impressed by the quality of the people surrounding the mayor. However, I live in Athens, whereas perhaps you don't. And I think that Athens, I don't think, I know, Athens is hit by an epidemic, which is parking. And the mayor has done absolutely nothing about it. And I've been wondering, with all those fancy people around him, couldn't he do something about it? I mean, it's unbelievable. We lose as Athenians millions of hours per day because of the situation of the parking and the ensuing traffic problem. Millions of hours. That diminishes our competitiveness. It is, in my view, probably the biggest problem we have in Athens. And I'm wondering, couldn't Microsoft come up with a clever system of controlling this scourge. And this is, now I know the mayor is running out of time, but he could set up something, or at least he could set the foundation so that his successor does something, because it's not that he didn't do something, his predecessors also didn't do anything about it. This is a gradual getting worse and worse. So I would hope in the last month that he's still there, he could set up something, at least force the next one to do something. That's my...
I would like Kostas Hambidis to say a few words, and I would like to add some, some thoughts to that.
So, from my part, I have to say that this exactly week we started in Athens to work on the smart parking system. It's a huge project in Athens. It will cover 1,000 parking slots in the center of Athens, from Academia Street until Evangelismos Hospital, Mr. Manos. So in about 6 to 7 months, the project will be completed. It's a huge investment from the city, and it's one of the biggest smart parking platforms in Europe, and of course the biggest in Greece.
Well, I would like to add something. There are some structural problems very important in Athens, and you are maybe one of the very few who know them well, and you have tried to bring some structural change. Of course, you remember that you passed a law from the Greek parliament that every new building was going to be built in Athens should... 40 years ago. What did happen? Can you tell us the story? It was compulsory, obligatory for every new building to have a parking space, a garage. And what did happen, Mr. Manos, with that?
As far as I know, you are responsible to implement the law.
No, the law doesn't exist anymore. The law doesn't exist anymore. I'm speaking about the law. You passed legislation from the parliament that every new building that was going to be built in Athens should have parking space.
Okay, I won't argue with you, because I don't know that the law was repealed. But as far as I know, it has not been repealed. It is just not being implemented. And as far as I know, the mayor is responsible for the implementation. Well, I'll check that.
It was not implemented because your successor passed an amendment in the legislation saying that the proprietor of the building, the one who was going to build, or Ergolavos, yes, he had the right to buy back his obligation to create parking space. That is what happened in the city, Mr. Manos. So we have a city where until, very recently we had very bad public transport, and we still have very bad public transport. Everyone is used to use his own cars. We don't have a lot of parking spaces. Buildings don't have their own private garage. So there are many constraints. Of course, we have to find our way out. But the solution is, and we are now created the basis for the future solution, is not to have private cars in the center of the city. That is what we are trying to do now with the Triangle project.
Okay.
And by the way, I would just point out that New York City, for the first time, just last week, did the first efforts at congestion pricing to do exactly that, is to keep cars from going into the city center, which really is an issue in almost every city around the world.
Well, as you know, London has done that years ago.
Yes.
But that too could be done in Athens. But the situation in Athens is really dramatic, and it's not just a triangle, it's all over Athens. It is unbelievably bad.
Well, I think we all appreciate your perspective on this, and the reality of it is that every city has traffic issues. It's a growing city and a vibrant city, and I think the solutions are not just around the corner, but a little bit more in the future. But thank you, and thank all of you today, because I think we're just out of time. So sorry I can't focus on any more questions, and I'm glad we heard about the parking situation. Thank you very much.